since GLP-1s started to become really popular, more and more coaches are gravitating back towards one-to-one coaching on the gym floor, which I think is pretty fucking cool. However, I think that this entire trend also exposed a lot of bad coaches who just don't know how to train people in person. And
Sure.
I was always a firm believer that I'm not saying you shouldn't try to do anything online and start an online business as a coach, but like if you don't have that experience working with people and being entrenched in that human touch of this entire profession, I think you're going to lack a lot of skills, and I think you're going to miss on a lot of probably inputs and details that might help clients. And I think it's pretty cool to see people, coming back to that. I just want to prelude with this. Every single guest that I had so far, I wanted to touch upon the topic of GLP-1s and how it affects our industry, how it affects us as coaches, how it affects our clients. What's your experience so far? I mean, you live in LA, so I'm just going to like stereotypically assume that like
Sure.
you do have clients who use GLP-1s. Has your approach to coaching clients and educating clients of that changed? And just give me some details on how you approach the entire situation with GLP-1s.
Sure. Well, you got to remember, I've been doing this for 33 years. So probably the first year or two that I was in LA was when fen was a huge thing. I don't know if you remember that. It was fenfluramine and phentermine. It was this combo, and it was kind of the original. They didn't work anything like GLP-1s, but that was kind of the original medical craze of just get on this pill and you're going to lose weight. And people that only had like 10 or 20 pounds to lose would still get on these pills. And then I forget which one, if it was phentermine or fenfluramine, but one of them was causing heart issues. People were having big time problems. So I know I go as far back as that. I've had clients who've had the lap band. I've had clients who've had gastric bypass with a duodenal switch, and now GLP-1. So I've seen it all, and it really doesn't matter what intervention somebody who's in that kind of a desperate situation decides is for them. The key is still going to be behavioral change. And I don't think anywhere along the way have I seen that implemented well with people who get on these medications, because it's still that quick fix mentality. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with using GLP-1s. It just means that if you don't address the underlying cause of the weight gain to begin with, especially if you decide that for whatever reason you want to go off of those medications at some point, you may not have the muscle developed as far as your behaviors and emotional well-being to keep the weight off. So the one thing I will say about GLP-1s, it seems to me like it's, at least when they're promoted now, they really warn people about muscle loss and about the need for resistance training while they're doing it. So in some regards, I haven't gotten any new clients who got on GLP-1s and then decided they needed to start lifting weights. It's been clients that I've already had who've decided to go on it. But I could see where there will be an industry as these drugs or medications continue to grow, that where there's an opportunity there for personal trainers and coaches to help people to maintain their muscle and ultimately in the long run be able to keep that weight loss. And that's the case whether somebody was going to do it with GLP-1s or if they thought they were going to crash diet. Clients where I've had to do crash diets with them because they're actors and they need to be ripped in a certain number of
Yeah,
weeks, and so I have to do something that I
understandable. Yeah.
would never. Yeah, I would never do certain things with a average person because there's always a price to pay on the back end for doing things quick, whether it's adaptive thermogenesis or whatever. I mean, I think that these medications are a game changer for a lot of people. The morbidly obese population, regardless of side effects of the medication, they're minimal compared to the fact that I might have a heart attack, I might have a stroke, I might die, whatever.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
in that regard, it's like, you know what, we got to deal with the biggest frog first. And so let's get the weight loss out of the way, and then we can, deal with the rest. But hopefully, like I say, people have good who are recommending that they do resistance training and that they make lifestyle changes. They're not just Dr. Feelgood, hey, I'll give you a prescription and then just let you go
Yeah.
off to your own
Yeah.
devices, because that happens and always has and always will. But I do think that a lot of trainers, especially trainers who maybe aren't so confident in what they do, feel threatened by GLP-1s. They feel like they're going
Yes.
to
I'm
take
glad you said that.
away, yeah, they feel like they're going to take away their business. And it's quite the opposite. It's like, this is a boon for me because I'm predominantly do strength training with clients. So I'm happy not to have to worry too much about fat loss and having people on diets and all that kind of stuff because I just want to lift and want to train and get people strong and feeling good. So I think that these medications are definitely more of a blessing than not.
One thing that crossed my mind while you were talking about that is I mentioned Dr. Mike Zordos from Florida State University. He is, one of my favorite mentors and one of my favorite people ever. So I'm really glad that all his education that he has given me and provided me with about training programming and periodization and absolutely everything that I haven't really used to a significant enough level just simply because of my weight loss and my story. I've been always sought out from clients who want to lose tremendous amount of weight. So right now, my job is much more dynamic. My job right now is so much more fun. This is something that I've said probably in every single episode that I recorded so far, and I'm going to repeat it to you as well, Chad. GLP-1s for me, having that intervention for people who really need it, for people who have this, and this is a completely new, just forcefully, used term, food noise, but I'm just going to use it anyway. Having clients who are struggling with food noise, having clients who are constantly thinking about food, if you remove that, you have a client who is happy. You have a client who is excited about lifting weights. You have a client who is really just thrilled with the idea that now finally they can just have the effects of proper body recomposition and not really have to worry about constant yo dieting and lacking energy and then just constantly thinking about food, preparing one meal. And while you're preparing that meal, you're thinking about the next meal, what you're going to eat, right? So like,
Right.
if we eliminate that, like, I don't understand. Well, actually, I do understand coaches who are exaggerating the side effects and fear-mongering people away from GLP-1 use. But I think also those are the same coaches who think that if you have an enhanced client, right? Client who uses anabolics, that as a coach, you need to convince him to step away from that so that he relies on you to build muscle, which is asinine, right? So people who use GLP-1s are using it to eliminate a certain barrier that for us coaches can sometimes be excruciatingly painful and difficult problem to solve, not because we can't solve it, but simply because you can work with someone for 6 months and you're just talking about the same stuff. You're constantly talking and trying to negotiate with them, trying to find ways and strategies and to mitigate hunger, trying to educate them that running away from hunger and stuffing yourself with a lot of volume of low calorie foods can be detrimental to their overall approach to maintenance of their results. So I'm seeing just less and less of those issues with clients who are using GLP-1s. And I think, like you said, I 100% agree. I think all of us who actually give a shit about people, who want them to succeed and who want them to be healthy and not really being so hyper focused on client retention, I think we're always going to be fine. And I think GLP-1s exposed a lot of bad fucking coaches who really rely too much on like AI, who are relying too much on cookie cutter programming, both from the perspective of nutrition and training as well. So like this wasn't something that I wanted to discuss with you like straight ahead, but I'm really glad that I got your opinion on this because essentially every single one of my guests so far, Chad, we pretty much have a consensus. Like what you said, you just kind of repeated all of our thoughts and opinions on this particular trend. I think that's always going to be indicative of who actually gives a shit about people, because that human touch is going to become so much, probably the most important factor and facet of coaching online, because AI is just taking over, but there is never going to be a technology that's going to replicate like the human touch part.
Right. I agree.
Like speaking of transformations, I told you a little bit about myself and my transformation. You talk a lot about the transformations and maintenance of transformations, which I think is a wonderful topic for us to address. One of the topics that I kind of wanted to discuss with you is essentially a big question of why do transformations generally crumble? What patterns have you seen in your clients who lose results versus those who keep them?
Right. Well, I mean, I think the attitude going into it is the most important thing. So if you're going into it thinking, I'm going to do this for a certain length of time, 3 months, if it's a 90-day challenge, or 6 weeks, or 6 months, or whatever. But if you think that it's a finite thing, then yes, it may be easier to wrap your head around and to be motivated because it's such a short amount of time. But I try to let people know right in the beginning, we're playing the long game here. This is a rest of your life kind of thing. I don't care unless, like I said, there was an actor or somebody had a wedding or something, out of the atypical, out of the ordinary, that would necessitate the need to do something quickly. But most people don't need to do that. And especially if I have people who aren't even used to working out, well, that can be enough of a shakeup to their life. I'm certainly not going to start even addressing nutrition stuff with them. They will, of course, start asking me stuff, and I will end up giving them advice, and they will naturally, usually, start to change their habits just based on the fact that they want to perform well in the gym, and they start making their life outside of the gym conform more to what their goals are inside of the gym. So, for me, it's really getting people on board in the beginning that this is not a quick fix. This is a process, and there's going to be starts and stops, and that's just true with anybody. I don't care if you're in business and you have to travel a lot for your business. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom and you've got to schlep the kids all over town. Whatever it is, we're all busy and we all have to find time for it. So the that's a process, and most people, they don't want to go through that process to find out what works for them. They just want to be told what to do. So coaches will give them that and say, okay, well, you're going to have chicken and broccoli, 4 times a day, and you're going to do this many hours of zone two, and you're going to do
Yeah.
this many weight training days. And while that's technically true advice that would work, that's really not going to have any kind of lasting impact on most people. So if I've got somebody who's just starting working out, I'm going to focus on that and that alone for several weeks. And as we gradually, nutrition and stuff like that will come up in conversation, and they will do something like maybe have too many drinks the night before a workout, and the first time they feel what that feels like in the gym, they're like, I don't like this. Or more likely, what will happen with people is they'll get a certain ways in the process with me, and then they'll have to miss for whatever reason. And when they come back, they're always like, no matter what they were doing, they're like, I really felt like I needed to get into the gym. I really missed the gym. And then they start to realize how good they feel, because most people don't realize how bad they feel because it's just normal to them. And so once they start to change that and start to feel good, then we can worry about starting to make some of the more long-term behavioral changes that will support that. But we got to give them a reason first. And for me, the quick fix is never a good reason, because we all lose motivation. We've all decided, okay, I'm gonna learn to play guitar, or I'm gonna write a book, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that, and we go into it guns a blazing, and then a month from then we're onto something else. It was just too hard. Well, for a lot of people, that's the way exercise and nutrition is, and we tend to be, because we are into it, as coaches, we tend to feel like everybody should be into it, and we can't understand why somebody wouldn't be into it. And some people just, they've never had maybe a good connection with their body. They hated physical education in school back when they still had it in school. In the U.S., they don't even have much of it anymore. So, I think it's trying to get people to enjoy the process. And so for me, that's why I love one-on-one stuff, because, even in a small group setting, why I do think they have tons of benefits. With a one-on-one setting, I'm going to get more real with somebody. They're going to feel more open to letting me know what's really going on with them. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients cry in the gym, stuff like that,
Yeah, man.
which just
Yeah,
would
yeah.
not
I
happen
agree.
in a small group or a large group setting. So it helps me to be able to figure out how I'm going to reach that person best, and some people need gentle encouragement and some people need you to be a little more direct and a little more forceful, and you can't have a one size fits all approach to
Hmm.
clients because something that may work well for one client may cause the other one to bristle and not come back. So you have to have nuance to what you do and not just have some kind of this is the way I do things, and you need to adapt to me. It's like, well, no, you need to kind of help your clients along and figure out what's going to click for them to make it mean something to them as much as it means to you.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think that's where online coaching, I'm just going to say it, like, I think online coaching throughout the last like couple of decades, I think it diminished the importance of individuality. Mm, I think individuality goes far way beyond anatomy and biomechanics. It's pretty much, meeting people where they are. I think that always has to be a first step. But also, like, dude, like there's nothing better. There's nothing cooler than when you have a person who genuinely fucking hates and despises physical activity and training and lifting. You get them to that place where you said, where all of a sudden they go on a vacation or they have a wedding, or God forbid they hurt themselves, or they're in a hospital, and then all of a sudden you get back from that and they're telling you that they're literally like jonesing for training. And
Right.
that's just amazing. You mentioned also telling people what to do, and you also mentioned that in the context of short term results and quick fixes. I think a lot of times telling people what to do is unfortunately tied to only short term goals and short term results or quick results. I think some people, obviously not everyone, but I think some people do need that strict, almost like military kind of guidance. Do A, B, and C. I come from a place of personal training and nutrition coaching where there was a lot of emphasis on promoting and supporting autonomy. But I also feel that after almost 15 years of coaching now, that autonomy being forced on a client from the get go can be detrimental for their success. So there are experienced clients who are not beginners, who do understand certain basics, who have clear goals, and who also have a already pre-recorded idea of what the process is going to look like. But for most people, man, it's just like you can get over those initial hurdles just by telling people exactly what to do. So like personally, I don't do meal plans, but I will
I
structure
don't either.
like meals for my clients. I will help them structure, like weeks and even months of eating through recipes that are going to have a vast nutrient variety, right? Stuff like that. So I don't tell people like what to eat, when to eat it, but there are certain instances where you can educate people through that approach, because some clients are just going to tell me like, dude, if you give me 5 options, I'm going to lose it and I'm not going to stick with it. Tell me what I need to do today and tomorrow, and I accept that approach as well. But it took me a while to get to a place where I feel comfortable with that. However, I do also feel that there is value. Obviously, there's a lot of value in autonomy, but I think autonomy with clients, for us as coaches, is our responsibility to educate them and to teach them how to be autonomous with their choices. Do
Sure.
you agree with that, or am I just rambling here?
No, I mean, ultimately, they're going to have to develop that autonomy because they're going to need to be able to do this on their own. And, you know, some people, they may only be able to afford to come see you for 10 sessions or 20 sessions, and they're just trying to get some knowledge so that they can go and work out on their own and be on their own. And so those people, you're going to have to give them a lot more direct, this is exactly what you should do if you want to see results. And
Exactly.
if you're going to you go up on your own. If it's somebody like me, I mean, I've had clients for 25, 30 years. So you can take a much different approach. You never know who's going to last that long, but I'm always very confident that if somebody starts training with me, they're going to stay with me as long as they can afford it.
That's
So I
amazing, man.
have,
25 years. Wow.
yeah,
I
yeah,
do
I've
have
got,
some clients that I work with for like 5, 6 years, but like 25 years, having someone to trust you that much,
oh
that's
yeah.
awesome,
I
man.
mean, I've had clients who I started training them when their kids were little, and then now I've trained their kids as adults. It's like it's just one of the things that happens when you've been around for so long. Mm, But back to the whole, autonomy thing. I don't do meal plans either, especially if I don't have to do any kind of a quick intervention with somebody like an actor. Uh, I won't even initially have people do anything with their food. I want to have them track. I want to have them do anything at first. I just want to kind of see how do they do with training, with making that a regular part of their life. And invariably, they're going to start asking me about stuff, whether it's stuff they've seen online, whether it's supplements, whether it's whatever. And then I can start addressing some of these things. But it's because they've asked me, not because I've necessarily forced it upon them. So, sometimes it's like you gotta let clients believe it was their idea to go there, even though you had this, in your mind from the beginning that this is where I ultimately want to get them to. And different
And
people
I mean,
have.
ultimately, sorry to interrupt you, but ultimately, it's the client who makes the final decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so all you can do is I try to never speak in absolutes. I try to tell people, okay, it doesn't matter whether it's a nutritional intervention, whether it's dealing with an injury, whether it's a training modality or whatever. I try to just give them my best estimate on if you do this, this is likely what you will experience. And if you want to go that route, we'll go that route. This is what if I have an alternative, I may say this is the way that I would do it personally, but that may not be the way for you to do it. So that's where I get the autonomy stuff. People have to be a part of the decision most of the time. Like I said, if I only had somebody for a very brief amount of time and I needed to get a lot of information across, then that would be a different story. And now, since I have my book, I could just give them a copy of my book and say, this is, 33 years of experience in a book form. So that makes it a lot easier nowadays.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. Like, can something like a book, like if you have someone who you can work with only for maybe like 6, 10 sessions, have you seen your book as a tremendous source of information and guidance can serve some people as that next step if they can't afford coaching?
Well, it hasn't been out that long. It just came out in the middle of November. So I don't really know yet at this point. Um, I mean, I think it's naturally a great tool. It's certainly a great conversation starter. No matter how long I've been doing this or how many celebs I've worked with or whatever, having a book, especially a book that's not self-published, this is, from a legit publisher and all that, it does give you a certain extra layer of credibility that you would have thought you would have had just because of your years of experience or who you've worked with or, as NSCA Personal Trainer of the Year in 2018. Nobody really cares about any of that stuff. But the book all of a sudden gives you just some degree of credibility that maybe
Yeah.
the real credibility stuff doesn't in general population. Now, in terms of in fitness circles, I mean, people have known who I am and what I'm all about long before the book came about. So that's a little different story. I mean, I'll have other coaches and trainers around the world. If somebody needs a coach in LA, they're like, hey, can you see this person? Because they trust me and trust my work. But people who don't know who I am, general public, the book would definitely, I think, capture their attention and maybe kind of fast track if I wanted to pursue, especially something online, where I want to say, okay, here's a springboard from the book. If you like the book, here's some stuff, a little extra stuff that maybe is not in the book or whatever. And then eventually maybe I do some more high end one-on-one coaching. I don't know. I still like doing the in-person stuff so much, but I'm not getting any younger, so I probably should delve into a little more online revenue streams so I don't have to work so much physically. But I like it, and I think too, one of the best things about it is that when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I'd have people be like, "Well, you think you're still going to be a trainer when you're 50? I mean, who's going to want an old trainer?" And it's like, well, I'm 57 now, and I'm better than I've ever been as far as a coach goes. And because I've stayed in good shape, I think clients almost want me more than if I was just some, you know, good-looking young kid who had a good physique, because
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got experience. I've got so much experience and have dealt with so many different types of clients and different injuries and afflictions and whatever. And there's no substitute for that. No AI can figure that out, because some stuff you just know kind of intuitively. I always tell clients, like, I can usually guess where they're gonna how many reps they're gonna fail on almost without fail, because I can almost feel what the set feels like for them, because I've been doing this for so long. I mean, 33 years and over 1,000 hours a year. It's probably 35, 40,000 hours of training people, and that's one on one. That's not I'm not padding my stats by having a 20-person class 5 times a day, so I can all of a sudden say I've done thousands of hours of coaching. It's like, no, mine's one on one coaching, and there's no substitute for that.
Speaking of credibility, Chad, you have done that in the correct way. You haven't done that like fitness industry influencers have been doing it for the last decade or so, which is they write a book, they name themselves an author on social media, and then they build credibility. So you build credibility for 3 goddamn decades, and then you release the book. And for people who are watching this podcast, can you just show the cover of your book, please, so that
Oh,
they know what
sure.
we're talking about? And obviously, I'm going to link everything on every single platform. So let me ask you, what took you so goddamn long to to do that?
Well, I've had, you know, ideas about writing a book for years. And, it's hard to do when you're working, and you have a business, and you want to have a social life, you have family or whatever. So this opportunity came about. One of the acquisitions editors at the time at Human Kinetics was talking to Andrew Coates. I don't know if you know Andrew,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Andrew is one of my favorite people in the industry. Yeah, shout out to
yes.
Andrew.
Yeah, so he was Corey, the acquisitions editor, was talking to Andrew about Human Kinetics wanting to have a new and updated version of one of their titles for the 50 plus crowd. They'd already had 3 editions of the prior book, and they didn't want a 4th edition of it. They wanted something new from a new author, because the guys that wrote that originally were now probably in their 70s or maybe close to 80. I don't know. And they just wanted somebody that was Gen X, basically, which is me. So Andrew told him that he knew just the perfect person for this, and so he reached out to me, and I just decided, if I don't take this opportunity, I'm not going to write the book, because I'm not going to do it on my own. I'm not going to self-publish it, and I've needed that structure, just like clients need structure coming to train with us. I needed the structure of having a publisher and editors and deadlines and things like that. And it still took me way too long, longer than it should have. But
I
fortunately for
agree.
me, the early stuff that I wrote for the publisher, they liked it. So I think they gave me a little bit longer leash, so that I could finish the book, because it's completely different than any other book, certainly that Human Kinetics has, and probably most any fitness book out there, because what my challenge for me was to give evidence-based stuff, whether it was strength training or recovery or whatever, without it being boring. And the legit information is boring, which is why so many people go through the snake oil type stuff, because they need something flashy and different and whatever. And I'm like, well, that's just not me. So how am I going to write a book with the legit information that's not just so boring to read? So luckily, being the perfect demographic myself, like, I couldn't have written this book at 30 years old, even though I'd already been training clients for years and whatever, because I wouldn't have had the experience as a 50 something myself, and I wouldn't have had the next 20 years of working with clients of all age group, working with clients through their 50s and 60s into their 70s, because I've kept people for, 25, 30 years. So that made me, I think, a particularly good person to write the book. And because I am Gen X through and through, for me, I said, okay, what am I going to do to make this interesting? It's got to have like 80s pop culture references. So there aren't too many fitness books that talk about Dungeons and Dragons or Miami Vice or Magnum PI or Can't Buy Me Love or all the different stuff that I have in the book that I think makes it an entertaining read and gets people to read that next paragraph and actually get then to the meat and potatoes of it. Because it's not like the exercise. I don't have any special secret exercise or anything like that. I do think that I make things very simple for people, simple and repeatable. And I have 2 day a week, 3 day a week, and even 4 day a week programs in there. Although I don't think the average person needs to be doing 4 days a week of lifting, but they're in there just in case. But I think I make it simple and repeatable, and I've kind of bridged the gap between, because the book is originally intended for like an intermediate trainee who had access to a full gym. But I still wanted to write it in such a way that if somebody hadn't been in the gym in a long time, or maybe had never been in the gym, they could still understand what I was talking about and digest it and feel that they could implement it in their life. So I think I did a pretty good job of that, of making it accessible to both somebody who's a complete beginner or who's been out of the game for a while, or somebody who's still like me, who's working out all the time, but just kind of maybe needs a fresh take on things. And even one of the parts in the book that some of the trainers who've read the book love is every exercise I have something called Chad's Take at the end. And it's basically
I like that.
things that have come up in using this particular exercise. This is what comes up often with clients, and this is an alternative that you may want to try if X, Y, or Z happens when you use this exercise. And so people have really liked that. And that's, again, that's something that wouldn't have been possible without 30 some years of experience, because you are always adapting on the fly. I mean, I think a couple of weeks ago, I did something I'd never done before in 33 years, because I thought about it for a second. I needed an option because something wasn't working. Let me try this, and it worked. So, that's just something that happens from staying in the game long term. Is you just have a better, you have more tools in your toolbox, but you also just have a better idea of what might work, even if you've never tried it before.
Two things I'm going to say just straight from the get-go here, and I'm then going to piggyback on some other things that you said. Number one, I'm so fucking annoyed right now at myself because I was thinking about wearing my Van Halen t-shirt, and now you're talking about 80s references. And I hope you at least referenced, Back to the Future or maybe Marty McFly, at least once.
You're gonna have to read it and see.
I will absolutely do that because I'm going to be particularly interested from perspective of a coach and what I can learn about training people who are older than me. I'm now in my 40s, and for the past decade, I worked with clients who are older than me, and I always try to understand them better in a way that I ask them to educate me on themselves, their struggles, their issues, their experience as well. So I think your book could be also valuable for other coaches as well. I think you're going to agree with that. And also, I think having Human Kinetics as a publisher gives you an additional layer of credibility. Not that you personally need it, but for people who maybe are not familiar with your work and they see the book, I think that's going to be only benefit to you. So man, kudos and congratulations. I can't wait to read the book.
I know it's
And yeah,
available Amazon Europe. I think
awesome,
I've seen it on
perfect,
UK,
perfect.
on Germany, Japan. So it's available everywhere. And I'll say that I, the one good thing about social media, there's a young powerlifter slash trainer in the UK who came across my book because of a post James Krieger did about it, and he reached out and he was like so excited to read it because he wants to be able to help his clients who are in that age group. So it is, I think, a valuable resource, not just for the 50 plus trainee, but also for the people who maybe don't have a lot of experience training somebody who's 50 plus. And, historically, it's either been people thinking you need to be lifting soup cans and that you can't do
Yeah.
anything, hard if you're over 50, or trying to be like, oh, it doesn't matter that you're 50, you can train just like you did when you were 20, jump in on this group class where nobody changes the weights for anybody, no matter who's in the class. You all use the same weight.
Yeah.
And so, there's a happy medium in there where you can train hard and you can train sensible if you recover well and you don't try to do too much too soon. So I have workouts in there that I call like the bare minimum. It's like 3 exercises: push, pull, lower body. It's simple. If you can at least do that, and you do that two times a week minimum, you're gonna get somewhere. And everybody can do at least that. And then of course there's stuff that would build upon that, and a lot of people would start well beyond that. But it gives a place for somebody to start who may have a lot of reasons why they don't think they can make it to the gym because it's going to be some kind of hour and a half or 2 hour ordeal. It's like, no, I can get you in and out in 30, 40 minutes if I have to. I hope you stay longer and want to do some other stuff. But even with clients who come to see me, I still only get 60 minutes with them. So I still have to be judicious with what I decide to put in and what I decide not to. So I think that's an interesting part of the book too, because I have a chapter on warm-ups and stuff like that. And I'm always of the mindset that the warm-up should be whatever you need to get you ready, but it shouldn't be the entire workout. And things have
That's awesome.
gravitated.
Thank you for saying
Yeah,
that. Yes.
things have gravitated that way with the whole functional training thing and whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but most of my clients don't have enough time to do foam rolling and prehab and all this stuff. And then we got like 15 minutes to do the actual meat and potatoes of the workout. It's like, to be honest, even if you're using a substantial weight, but if you're keeping people's rep ranges in the 12 to 15 rep range, the first several reps of the set are going to be warm-ups because they're not really getting to the difficult reps to last, 3 to 5 reps anyway. So yeah, it would be different if I was having somebody do powerlifting workouts and we're doing heavy triples or whatever. We would need a more specific warm up longer, like I do on my bench press, which I do talk about in the book for those who need that. But for the most part, it's like I need something quick that gets people's mind on the gym and leaving the stuff that they came in with outside, the family stress, the work stress at the door, and just get their heart rate up a little bit, get a little blood flow, and just get them in the right mindset to work out. Uh, but it's because I do things very simply. Most of the work that I do is traditional straight sets. So somebody's going to come in. We might be doing 3 sets of 12 on a given day. Once somebody's up to speed and they're actually working hard, and the 12 isn't super easy for them, we're taking 2 to 3 minute rest periods because I want them to be fully recovered before they do it. And a lot of people, because they've been conditioned by seeing certain things online, think that you have to be working out nonstop and in a puddle of sweat, if not puke, by the time the workout's over, or it's not effective. And it's just not the case. And it's especially true for older clients. So I would much rather take plenty of rest between sets and be as strong as you can possibly be. And, I've got a 76-year-old client I've been training for 26 years, and he's stronger now than he was at 50. And we've had a lot of times where he's had starts and stops and regressions because of different medical issues or whatever, but we just keep plugging away and keep working. Well, at the level he's at now at 76, if we can just and we haven't stopped progressing, but even if we do stop progressing and we're just doing maintenance, if he can maintain this strength from 76 to 86 or 96, I mean, what more could you want? Where some of his
Man,
contemporaries are
that's
either
beautiful.
have already died or they're in a nursing home or, whatever. And so, I think that giving people that, you talk about autonomy. Well, giving people autonomy in their everyday life is the huge benefit of strength training because now they don't have to rely on other people. He may be 76, but he lives alone. He can go to the grocery store and lift heavy bags himself. He doesn't need help up his stairs. He's got a huge staircase in front of his house. He can get up and down his stairs just fine.
Yeah, and that's what real functional training does. That's what the actual function is, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, for me, not that I don't use exercises that would maybe be considered functional training, but I think strength in general is functional. So I don't care what exercise you use to build the strength. it's going to be functional and have a carryover to everyday life. You don't have to mimic the exact movements of, it's impossible to do, for one thing. You're not going to be able to mimic every single thing you do in life in just the right way and then start loading it and all that kind of stuff. So you just got to like try to get as strong as you can in all the muscle groups that you have and then maintain that, for as long as you can. But I'm all about having that independence and resiliency as you get older and not, because most people don't want to be a burden. They don't want to be a burden on their kids or their grandkids or their spouse as they get older. And for me, strength training is a great equalizer for that. And even my oldest client that I ever trained, she started training with me when she was 87, and she trained with me all the way till her mid 90s when she passed away. And she passed away from cancer, and she was still strong enough when she was in the hospital that those last couple days she was still able to get up and take herself to the bathroom, even right before she passed away. And to me, like, what better gift can you give somebody than the ability to have dignity in their death? The fact that she didn't have
Man,
to lay there in
yes,
bed in her
yes,
own
yes. Thank you.
filth and a mess and wait for somebody to come and change the sheets and all that, that's a huge thing. And so for me, that's what makes me get up and go to work every day. Yeah, the celebrity angle is fun. And it's great if you have, a client on TV or on a billboard or whatever. I'm not going to lie, that's cool and it's fun. But nothing is as meaningful as knowing when I got that text from her daughter after she had passed, thanking me for that and telling me that story. I was like, holy crap,
Yeah,
that's
man.
that's something.
That's you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, so for me, it's all about that. And so I think with the book, what I've done is I've given people a framework to be able to do that and to be able to stay strong in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond.
I have no idea how you manage to strike that balance between, because the first, probably like the first thought that comes across every single trainer and a coach when you mention human kinetics is like textbooks, right?
Right.
It's the database of knowledge that we all went through. And then all of a sudden you come up with a book that's for a, everyday user and for us where we can benefit a lot. So, man, thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
I want to
I was going to say,
go
I
ahead.
think
Go ahead.
it's a unique book, certainly for human kinetics, but unique in general. I think it bridges that gap between, mass market books that are popular, that are usually maybe not so evidence based, and between something that is more textbooky and super evidence based but dry. I think I've bridged the gap between those two realms in publishing fairly well. And so I hope the more people that do read it, that they feel that too.
Yeah, man, I don't doubt that's going to be invaluable resource for a lot of people, and you deserve everything good coming your way. Not just because of that, but because after all these years, I have never seen you succumb to the allure of drama and social media, egotistical, ego-driven arguments, and trying to just shit on people who are essentially your colleagues, dude. Like it's just asinine. So I look at you as a role model in the context of just focusing on the person that I'm trying to help. Like, why the fuck did I invested so much time and money into my education to help these people where all of a sudden these people are not my focus, but, some other influencer is? I think that's just ridiculous. And I have never seen you do that. So props to you, man. I respect you for that as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I
You know what,
appreciate that.
man? Speaking of, by the way, I have to say this is a digressions, but when you mentioned like functional training, I just kind of momentarily remembered my 30-minute warm-ups, which, started with like McGill threes and then foam rolling like every single goddamn muscle in my body, and then like the Joe DeFranco's 10-minute stretching routine, and then a treadmill, and then I plan to lift weights, and then I just can't because I'm like half exhausted already. So
Right.
that kind of reminded me of that. I think we all done that at some point in our career, right?
Sure.
I wanted to ask you. I think this is this is not something that I mentioned to you that we might discuss, but I know you're going to give me the best possible answer here. There's this trend of longevity, right? Coaching for longevity, supplementing with a lot of probably like bullshit supplements for longevity. Like longevity is a really popular term in the last, few years. And it seems to me that most people talk about longevity from a theoretical context, but listening to your literal stories and analogies, you've seen it happening in the first place. So what are you noticing that benefits, and this is not necessarily for older people, but this is for people in general, but I want you also to speak about people who are in their 50s, 60s and 70s who gave up on the idea that they can improve, and they're just waiting for, waiting for, the reaper to come. Like essentially,
Right.
most people are like that.
Sure.
And what have you seen in your practice that helps people the most? Because you obviously, I know you believe in the power of strength training, but can you tell me a little bit more about that aspect of your coaching, just like longevity, and how much does your work as a personal coach affects that?
Sure. Well, I will say this. I've always, even when I was in, my 20s and 30s, I always thought about it from my own training as I don't care if all the time I spend working out gives me one extra day at the end of my life. I care about if all those days leading up to it were better. And just like I was talking about with my client who died with dignity in the hospital in 95, there's so many things that can get in the way of longevity. I've had, people I went to high school with who died from a car accident, who got cancer in their 30s. I mean, there's so many things that have the ability to end your life prematurely. So having this like perfect morning routine, you're going to gaze at the sun for so many minutes and do all that. I mean, fine, I guess, but to me it's like, well, no, you know, I want to actually live and enjoy life. So what can I do that's going to be that? And I'm just not trying to micromanage my day all day long for some kind of nebulous idea of longevity. So, I mean, the biggest thing for most people, don't smoke. That's a huge thing. People who smoke, it's like it's almost frustrating for me to see people who work out and smoke because I see that all the time because it's like, okay, I can do the perfect workout with you, but I can't keep you from getting emphysema or lung cancer or whatever. I will make you as healthy as I can make a smoker. I will make you strong, whatever, but I'm going to highly encourage you to stop that. And it's usually more things like that: smoking, excessive drinking, opposite drug use, being some kind of an adrenaline junkie, driving too fast, all those kind of things, accidents that can happen that can take you out. That's going to be the bulk of it. Then when you get beyond those obvious things, then it's going to be like, okay, how active are we and are we overweight? Because the overweight part is the real killer. Metabolic disease, when we're talking about things like, diabetes and heart disease, the potential for strokes, all that kind of stuff. That's, heart disease is still the number one killer in the US. And so we do need to do things that will help prevent things that are most obviously going to kill us. And so that's where nutrition comes in. That's where not being overweight comes in. And that's something that we can do something about as coaches. We can't necessarily influence all the other stuff that people do, but we can certainly make sure that, okay, they know the importance of strength training, they know the importance of cardio, they know the importance of getting enough sleep, they know the importance of trying to minimize stress in their life as much as they can, um, and obviously proper nutrition and that kind of thing as well. But
Yep, yep.
human beings, we live on a continuum, and so there's like, the worst drug addicted, not working out, living on the streets human being, and there's like that goofy Brian Johnson who's going to spend all of his money trying to, be a vampire.
I had his image in my head when I was talking about longevity. Like you just know that.
Yeah, yeah. There's this huge gamut of what human bodies can be put through and still survive for a certain length of time. I don't think either extreme is the way to go. I think we want to do as much as we can, but it still has to complement our life. It shouldn't be all we're about. And so if your entire day is spent just trying to have more days, what have you accomplished really? Because every day you're like him, he's such an extreme case. Every day is spent just doing things to try to add more days. Well, where's the enjoyment part of life? Where's going out with friends and having meals and going to the movies and sleeping in or whatever it is. So to me, I think we've always got to try to find that happy medium, and that's usually where most success comes anyway. You need to have that balance, whether it's work life balance or nutrition and exercise in balance or whatever that is. But for me, it's never been about just longevity. It's really like they say health span rather than lifespan. However long you live, I want you to be able to get to the grave strong and healthy and not just like you said waiting for the reaper for 20 years in a bed in a nursing home. That just does not appeal to me whatsoever.
Yeah, man. And regardless of your religious beliefs, like who knows what's on the other side, you know? So like, maybe on the other side, we have to do manual labor as soon as we get there, you know? So I don't think that's a bad idea. But look, I mean,
Right.
you mentioned like dying with dignity in the context of one particular client, but I'm 40, so like it's like I'm not in some middle-age crisis or something like that, but I am pondering more and more about death and my life choices and stuff like that the older I get. And you know, the older I get, the more I see positive changes in how I approach training and also my nutrition from the context of long-term health and longevity in a non-crazy, ludicrous social media way. But kind of like growing old with dignity as well, Chad, you know. And I look at you, you are, you know, you are in your late 50s. I'm in my early 40s. And like it's just awesome to see someone like you representing that proof of the age really is a number, no matter how fucking corny that sounds. It really is a number. And you have made several references to your clients who are even in their 70s, clients in their 60s. Do you like is it your experience that clients who are at that age, let's say like 50, 60, 70s, less challenging in the context of achieving goals and kind of like even easier and more fun to work than younger population, younger demographic?
I think it really just depends on the individual. I'm very lucky because for many years, decades, I can train the people that I want to train. So I don't have to train anybody who's not into it, who's going to be a pain in the ass and not really want to be there and do the work, or they're not fun or mean. If somebody was mean or condescending, that they would just be gone. So I don't really have to worry about any of that. And I think a lot of times young trainers, because they need the work, they need to make the money, and they'll work with people that treat them so poorly, treat them like they're some kind of a servant. And it's like, no, I'm not a servant. I'm a professional. And so you're going to treat me like that because I have a lot of value. And it's like charging clients. It's like you're not paying just for that hour you're spending with me. You're paying for 33 years of experience.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that is invaluable. I should be charging you more actually for that. So, sure.
I think for people it's really easy to kind of just accept that as a given, as a fact when it comes to medical professionals, right? When you go to a surgeon, you are concerned with how much experience does that surgeon have, and you treat him with respect. But for us trainers, we are kind of like, hey, I'm giving you money, so do whatever the fuck I tell you to do. Really don't like to work with those clients. But like, let's put those awful people aside because that's them. I'm sure for you as well. That's minority as well, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the like majority of people that I work with are generally good people. Some people are just not made for coaching, but that doesn't mean that they're horrible people. When do you notice like first telltale signs when a client comes to you where you see that they're not committed, there might be quitting anytime soon? Do you ever notice early in your work with clients that, you know, this is just not going to work?
I've been pretty lucky. I think just because if anything, I'm probably easier on clients than what they may think the first, workout or two, because I've never trained somebody before. I don't know, even if they're in great shape, I don't know what injuries or afflictions they may have. I don't know what imbalances they have. So I want to find out that stuff on a relatively easy workout. And I even put those in my book, exactly what I do with clients, because I want to see that. And generally speaking, even though they're easy workouts because I'm teaching people proper technique that they've probably never used before, that it's usually harder than what they thought in spite of how easy it was. But it's also giving them a victory because I'm not there to prove how hard I can train somebody. So they actually get through the workout and they feel better leaving than when they came in the door. So they want to come back to the next workout. And then I just gradually step up the intensity to where over that first 10 sessions that they train with me, by session, 8, 9, 10, they're probably pushing pretty decent weights, up to what their current capacity is or pretty close. And usually by those, that's why I require everybody to do 10 sessions. I don't do single sessions. I don't give free sessions because you're not going to
That's awesome.
yeah, you're not going to understand what I do until you've gotten through really that first 10 and you can see that. And I've never had anybody, I shouldn't say I've never had anybody. I'm sure if I thought back, there's been somebody who just did 10 sessions with me and then that was it. But, I measure clients in decades, not in session numbers. So the one thing that clients know once they've gone through 10 sessions with me is A, they know I know what I'm talking about. They know I'm not going to hurt them. They know that I'm a fun person to hang out with. And they know they feel better than before they started training with me. So they want more of that. So I'm very lucky, um, but it doesn't matter to me whether somebody is 15 or 50 or 95. I may relate to them a little bit differently. We may talk about different stuff, because for me the fun isn't I mean it is fun. I like teaching people proper form and getting them to connect to their body. Maybe they've never been connected to their body and they're what I call physically dyslexic. They just, have never had to do that before. And I do like that. But the real fun of the job happens in between the sets when we're just shooting the shit for the 2 to 3 minutes during
Yeah,
their rest
yeah,
period. And that's where
yeah.
you're creating that relationship and that bond and that buy-in. And that's where stuff will come up where all of a sudden then maybe they do start talking about, oh hey, what about this supplement, or oh hey, should I do keto, or this, that, or the other, whatever it is. But yeah, if you're not a people person and you're not good at conversation, then it might be a horrible job to have. But I'm really good at that, and it doesn't matter if I have 5, 6, 7 clients in a row back to back with no rest. I can be just as involved and into it on client number 6 as client number 1 or 3.
And you kind of just subtly brought it back full circle. We talked about this early in our discussion. The human touch, right? So just being a people's person can get you a long way in this industry. And you have to combine that with certain element of just being pedantic in your craft and knowing how to talk to people. Because sure, you can be a drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, right? You can be that character, but that character is going to just attract a certain number of people, right? But you kind of also have to wear a few different hats. Like you don't have to necessarily be this social chameleon and just be fake. But just being a normal goddamn person, like that's something that's been missing in our industry for quite some time, I would say. And I'm really glad you put it, back full circle on that. And this is how we can like literally just finish this conversation. I absolutely loved this. You inspired me a lot, and
Thank you.
I thank you for that. I thank you for the book as well. I think it's going to be a marvelous and useful resource for us coaches as well. But even though this is not going to be well structured in the context of a podcast, like I kind of don't give a shit. This is a conversation. That's how I see it. So I have to ask you, let's say theoretically we have a listener who is in their 60s, maybe 70s, or we have a listener who wants to encourage or has been unsuccessfully trying to encourage one of their parents or both of their parents to start strength training and to seek some sort of advice or guidance from someone like you who knows a thing about or two about actual nutrition. Do you have any advice how to help people convince either their loved ones or themselves, regardless of age, to actually start taking care of their bodies? Because I will say only one thing: for most elderly who I've been working with, They just simply don't believe that they can build muscle due to sarcopenia. But that doesn't necessarily have to be reversed, but it can be, the negative effects can be diminished. And I truly believe, even though some might say this is bro science, I do believe that regardless of age, we can build muscle. So do you have any advice for people who are like on the fence and, or like they're trying to convince their loved ones?
Sure. Well, I mean, I do think, obviously I'm very biased about this. I do think my book does a very good job of that, of both the whys I talk about, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, and metabolic decline as kind of the big three things we need to address as we get older. Certainly, I think that it's the sooner you start, the better. I think your 50s is your last best chance to get as strong as you can. It is tougher if you're just starting out and have never worked out, if you're 60 or 70 or 80 or even 87, like my client was. But even she was getting stronger, and she didn't start working out until 87, and she was getting stronger into her 90s until the breast cancer came along. So I agree with you. There's nothing that can prevent you from trying to get stronger. You may not have that if you start at 87. Even though you're getting stronger, you're probably never going to get as strong as you would have been had you started at 40 or started at 60, but you're still stronger than you would have been had you not started working out at 87. So I really don't see that there's any downside or negativity to start trying to get stronger. I think you have to do it smartly and sensibly. You have to not be afraid to push yourself a little bit, but I think that has to happen over time, because the biggest thing that's going to get in your way when you're older is getting injured. And we need to have that consistency. I beat that over the head in my book, and I talk about the need to avoid injury. So you don't want to go and jump in at 70 being like, okay, well, when I was in high school, I used to bench 225, so I'm going to go and try to slap some weights on there, and you haven't been doing anything. It's like, you're
Yeah.
going to get hurt. You don't need to be doing box jumps. I don't care how many times you've seen it online. For me, when you're older, the risks outweigh the rewards of doing a box jump. If you want to jump, go ahead and jump up. Jump up in the air and teach yourself to land. You don't have to even jump that high. Get those good plyometric kind of mechanics down, but you don't have to try to jump onto a box. One trip and fall on a box at 70 or 80, and that can be the beginning of the end if you break a hip or a femur or something. So I'm always about minimizing risk, and then I talk about it in the book. If there is a safer alternative, why not do it? There's no one
Hmm.
exercise that everybody either has to do or that somebody should necessarily never do it. But, you do have to be more cognizant of, do you really need to be doing that at any age? Me, for instance, even me, even though I'm still benching heavy and I post that kind of crap all the time, but I don't squat anymore because my knee cartilage is shot. And so if I squat heavy to depth, I'm going to hasten the need for a knee replacement. And I'm like, you know what? We're like this far away from being able to have like injectable stuff to regrow your own cartilage. I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize my ability to do that. So I can still train around it. I don't have to squat to depth. I'm not competing in full powerlifting meets anymore. So it's okay that I don't squat. I don't care. You can call me a wuss for not barbell back squatting, but so be it. And then that's the way it is with most clients. I don't have any clients right now who are barbell back squatting. There's plenty of other alternatives to do to work their quads and their glutes and their core, whatever you want to do. And I think for a long time there, certainly probably pre-COVID from like 2012 on, kind of raw powerlifting became vogue. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
everybody was doing the big three. Everybody had to squat, bench, and deadlift. Well, it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but maybe you don't have to do the barbell of each one. Maybe you can do a hex bar deadlift or a kettlebell deadlift. You can do a dumbbell bench press or a machine bench press. You can do goblet squats or lunges or whatever. You don't have to do any particular exercise. And that's one of the problems that I have with a lot of the group coaching stuff is there's no option for nuance, really. It's like, this is the workout today. This is what you're going to do. And you're just going to try to get it done as fast as possible, even if your form is shit. And for me, that's not That's not good for anybody. It's certainly not good for somebody who's 60, 70, 80 years old.
Yeah, man, that's a wonderful take. I love at least certain aspects of Mark Ripito and his work, because he popularized the barbell as a training tool for demographics who would probably never use it before. But you also mentioned kettlebells, you mentioned dumbbells, you mentioned a lot of different types of equipment. But I will also add, maybe you don't agree, but I will also add that, at least for me, because I'm not that experienced in training elderly, I feel the safest recommending machines if they go to
Sure.
the gym. And I think there's
I
nothing
agree.
wrong with that. Okay, cool. That's
No, I still try to
we
get
go
people
ahead.
to, I was going to say, I still try to, I don't want to say wean people off of machines because I don't do that, but I don't necessarily permanently prevent them from trying other stuff. But in the beginning, when I don't know how somebody's going to be, it's going to be body weight stuff and machines. And then once I see how strong they are or not, how their body recovers or not, then I can say, okay, let's try this. If I were to put most older people through some kind of a workout where, let's say, I had them do reverse lunges, they wouldn't be able to walk for a week, and they certainly wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to come back, you know? And so I wanted people to have a good, positive experience with what they're doing. And so I want to stack victories. I don't want people to feel bad about the process. And so if they come in that first workout and I give them shit that's too hard for them to do, that's a negative, and they're going to feel crappy about themselves leaving, and they're going to not want to come back and experience another, you know, defeat. And so for me, I'm always about building these little victories. And I think a lot of times as coaches, we, especially, Gen Pop trainers, is we forget that the name is in the title, personal training. And so we forget about the personal part. And so we just want to fit all this training knowledge we have and dump it onto somebody, and it may not be appropriate, for that individual. So it doesn't mean that somebody will never be able to do something that you have in your arsenal, but you don't have to show everybody everything you know in the first workout or two to get them to have buy-in and know that you care. So I think that coaches need to be a little more confident in the fact that if you know what you're doing and you take care of people, they're going to keep coming
Mhm.
back. You don't have to leave them in a pool of blood at the end of the workout to
Yeah.
say, okay, oh, this
Yeah.
person really knows what they're doing.
Yeah, but leaving them in a pool of blood has been a marketing trick for many trainers, especially in the group setting, for many, many years now.
For sure.
So let's say you and I, we have now accomplished the final part of what we wanted to discuss, and we convinced, let's say, someone who is my age, who is early 40s, and now they can convince or motivate their parents or a parent to go to the gym or to start lifting weights or to start considering taking care of their nutrition and resistance training. But even though I said this is our final theme, I think there is a second part so that we can make this piece of advice complete and holistic, because there's going to be this huge challenge now. And I'm not brown nosing here. You know, I love your work, but coaches like you are a fucking rarity. So, how do elderly or even people in their 50s, how do they find someone who is not going to tell them to do a fucking box jump before they even show them how to vertically jump, how to do vertical jump? So, are there any telltale signs of bad coaches for older demographics, and vice versa? Are there any positive signs where they're kind of like, hey, this dude is going to get me to that point that I want to get to without being injured?
Right. I mean, I think you have to try to do your homework as much as you can. I know for a lot of elderly people, the computer and the internet is kind of a difficult challenge, so they may need to have help from their kids or even their grandkids. But look up their social media, see what kind of stuff they're doing, see if they have a website. Do they have any um, testimonials, videos of themselves in action, any podcast interviews or things where they talk about their philosophy and what they do. I think you have to try to do all that because uh, it's hard. I mean, most people don't know what they don't know. And I've had so many clients who worked with other trainers who didn't know that they had been working with somebody crappy until they came and worked with me. And then they're like, I didn't know this was how it was supposed to be. And I'm like, well,
Yeah,
I never like to talk bad about whatever people have experienced before. I just do what I do. And if you
yeah,
if
yeah.
you like it, if you see the value in it, then great. But I am super, super confident in what I do because I've been doing it for so damn long. I mean, I've been training clients longer than most trainers have been alive. So, it's really easy to get buy-in, I think, when you have that kind of experience and that kind of reputation. Um, and I know how to talk to people. So whether I'm talking to them on the phone or they come in person, I can make them feel comfortable and feel confident and excited about the process rather than, oh my God, I have to start working out because my doctor said, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, you get to work out and this is going to be fun. And, you're going to come back in a couple of days and we're going to do it all again. So I just try to make the whole experience from start to finish enjoyable because if people want to hang out with me, then we're going to get the work done because they're showing up and I'm going to make sure of it. And I talk about it in the book. I still have paper journals that I write in, pen and paper. I have 33 years worth in my closet, so I can't bring myself to get rid of them. But but the reason why I get results with people is as simple as keeping track of their workouts. So every single workout, especially once I've been training somebody for a long, long time, we've obviously done lots of different exercises, but I can always look back in that book to the last time we did that exercise. And you can do it with an iPad and apps if you want. But for me, the paper works best. Okay, last time, I'll tell somebody straight out. Last time we did this weight, we got 10, 11, and 10. Let's see if we can get like all three sets of 11, or maybe even throw a 12 in there if you're feeling good or whatever. And we just keep chipping away at that. And that's as simple as that. And so, I talk about it in the book about, personal records when it comes to clients. I'm not talking about their 1 rep max. I'm just talking about, hey, we're trying to beat whatever you did last time. And there'll be times when somebody's been sick, somebody's been out of town, somebody hasn't been getting enough sleep, whatever it is, where they're not going to be able to beat stuff they did before. But I can make a note in the book of why that was. But every time somebody can't beat what they've done before, that's usually the time that they double down on their motivation because they don't like
Mhm.
that. They don't like not being able to do something better than before. So they're like, oh, I'm never going to drink now the night before a workout. I'm done doing that, or whatever it may be. So that's when you're giving people, like you talked about autonomy before, that's where you're giving people some purchase in the process.
Yeah,
And so it's like,
yeah,
so I let
yeah,
them know every time. It's like, okay, this is what we did before. Maybe we'll get it. Maybe we won't. I always say it. I mentioned it in the book. Some days are diamonds. Some days are coal. Not every day is a diamond day. You're not going to set a PR every time unless it's very early in the process, but we're still going to try for it. And it comes in fits and spurts. And there'll be times where, you have several workouts where you're not at your best. And then all of a sudden we eventually have a, a jump and you've done more than you ever did before. So, and I've seen it, like I said, with my client who's 76, stronger than ever. And we've been through so many different things where he had to backtrack and we had to fight for the same ground over again. And yeah, that sucks, but it's part of the process. But he wouldn't
yeah,
be strong as an ox at 76 had we not stuck to the process.
yeah. Just a tiny digression here. I hope you don't mind. With us coaches who know, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but I've done this many, many times. We're not bullshitting clients, but we can find progress away from numbers. So, in your particular example, if we have, let's say, 11, 10, and 9, and we get it to 11, 10, 10, meaning the number of reps in 3 sets, that's progress. But if we do 11, 10, 9, and we notice on the last set the concentric portion of the movement was much more explosive, or the negative was somewhat longer, prolonged in all 3 sets in every single rep. Well, for me, that's sign of progress that I explain to my client without them thinking that I'm just, trying to be toxically positive. So yeah, man,
No, and that's true. And I
yeah, go
was just
ahead.
going to say, I make notes to that effect in my book. So when when I have the reps, I may, like, let's say somebody did 12 reps, but rep number 12 was a little bit shitty. I'll call it 11 plus 1 instead of 12 because they didn't really earn a full 12. And I'll tell the client that. I go, well, that's really 11 plus 1. Next time we'll try to get 12. And that just means that the form, wasn't there. Sometimes I'll make notes about form. I'll make notes about they came in and something was hurting a little bit today. So I intentionally kept it light. There's a reason why we didn't try to hit that personal record that day so that I know because I can't remember it all in my head. And nothing frustrates me more than seeing trainers who don't track their clients' workouts. It's like, what are you doing? Just trying to make people tired? We're trying to be to track progress here. And so the only way that I know to guarantee progress is to have a record of it and try to beat that record and then keep going and stacking positive days. It's not just about making somebody tired 2-3 days a week. Anybody can do that. That doesn't mean they're going to make any kind of progress.
Yeah, but that's the easy way to train clients, and just to give them that sensation of exhaustion, and then the client feels happy because they were exhausted.
Yeah, because the
Like, I
client
can't
doesn't know
even
any
remember.
better.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even remember how many times I argued with clients that you don't have to be exhausted. You don't have to have a debilitating pump to actually stimulate growth. And that always stems from bad previous experiences with people who are just trying to use exhaustion as a marketing tool. So now at the absolute end of this conversation, I just wanted to thank you, man. Thank you for being
Sure.
an inspiration. Thank you for giving me so much of your time. This is just awesome, man. This is beautiful. And thank
No,
you
my
like
pleasure.
for supporting a podcast that's in its first week of inception, literally.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if you happen to see Tom Venuto did a pretty thorough review of the book, which I was very thankful for. Tom has obviously a huge following and was kind of the OG with Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
I love
talks
Tom's work.
about, yeah, and he talks about my book, aside from he gave it a 5-star review and whatever, but he talks about the workouts in this book, you could be 20, 30, 40, it doesn't matter. The workouts aren't pigeonholed for somebody who's 50 and up.
Hmm.
The tone of the book has more of that because I wrote these references. If you're a fan of 80s pop culture and you're younger, you'll still dig the book. Obviously, I talk about things like I mentioned before, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, and stuff. I talk about being on certain medications that may not relate to you. But when it comes to the exercise techniques and the Chad's take with each exercise, when it comes to the programs that I use, all of that I do with teenage actors. I have a collegiate gymnast. You name it, it's all the same workout. So don't think just because of the title says after 50 that you can't benefit from the workouts or the technique of the exercises. It's just that, the other stuff that makes it enjoyable to read may be something that somebody who's grew up in the 80s would gravitate towards a little bit more. But I do think that everybody, can benefit from reading the book regardless of their age.
Honestly, I'm psyched to try to pick up on all those references because I was born in '85, so theoretically I should be a '90s kid.
Right.
But all of my heroes, action movie heroes, are from the '80s. So
It
I'm
was
looking
a
forward
great
to
time
that.
to grow up. And I talk about it in
Yeah,
the book.
yeah. Especially in the
Introduction to the
context of
book.
music, by the way. American music in the '80s is just something special.
Well, and I'm very lucky because, Duff McKagan, the bass player from Guns N' Roses, wrote the foreword to my book on the back
Really?
cover. Oh yeah, yeah, you can
That's
see.
awesome.
Yeah, Duff McKagan right there.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's
and
pretty
so Duff
cool.
wrote the foreword on the back cover. Back here, I've got William Zabka, that's Karate Kid or
Yeah,
Cobra Kai. For those of you who don't know, Sweep the Leg Johnny.
yeah, yeah.
Stephen Perkins. Stephen Perkins, one of my best friends, a drummer from Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyro. So yeah, I've got a lot of '80s cred and Gen
Beautiful,
X cred.
beautiful.
So yeah, anybody who has any affinity at all for the '80s, I think will enjoy the book and either decide to pass it along to some older person in their family or may even implement the stuff themselves.
That's awesome, man. What a fantastic touch, because it's just fantastic idea. I love it, and I'm really excited about it. Chad, dude, respect you a lot. I love you, and I thank you for doing this with me, man. This was absolutely awesome, man. I
Thank
hope
you
we
for
can
having me
have
on. It's always a a pleasure to get in front of different audiences and people who may not know who I am. Because, like you said, I don't go out and promote myself at all. And so, for more people to find out about me and hopefully benefit from the book, I just appreciate the opportunity.
Once again, man, thank you so much. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Anytime.
Uh,